Welcome to LUTV News in Focus, where we feature interesting topics on campus, in the community, and in the world of culture. I'm Jonathan Tippett. Biden, Trump, Democrats, Republicans, mail-in ballots, debates, politics, information overload. For students and most people wanting to make informed decisions about the upcoming election, it can be confusing. Political science professor Dr. Sara Gubala is here to share information about the poll at Lamar University and help us make sense of one of the most highly anticipated elections in recent memory. Dr. Gubala, thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
So let's just start out with how you can vote at Lamar. This has been a process that's been going on for a while. That's been getting set up, groundwork's being laid. So tell me a little bit about that process and how we got where we are.
Absolutely. So you can vote on Election Day at the Montaigne from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. I believe we're going to have rides from the dorms and also from the Setzer Center. Not that it's a super far walk, but we want, in case it's raining, we want to make it absolutely easy for people. SGA is also doing an event called Drive the Vote on October 13th and 14th. And unfortunately, I don't know the times, but they are essentially taking people from Lamar down to the courthouse at Jefferson County for the early voting. So this will allow you, if say you're from Dallas and you did not request your absentee ballot, don't plan to vote in a limited ballot just on those days, or you could go on your own in the early voting period, but you will only receive a limited ballot, which would be president and vice president, U.S. senator, and any other major statewide things that everybody would receive in the state of Texas.
So just to be clear, that means there is no early voting happening on the campus of Lamar.
Correct. So the state of Texas, the legislature changed the laws. So it used to be that we could request maybe 2 or 3 days of early voting and we would have been approved. But they changed the law and said basically if you cannot provide early voting for every day of early voting, then you can't do it. Well, for a university, it's really difficult to put aside room and space for that many days, particularly space that has official address, because that's kind of the state rules, and parking, and also access for disabled people as well. And so the Montaigne is really it, but we couldn't take it offline because we had to plan this over a year out, and we didn't know about COVID, and there was going to be football games and all that stuff, so making it very difficult.
Yeah, there's been a lot of kind of last minute changes in regards to not just that, but also things like polling and mail-in votes.
Absolutely, absolutely.
This election is, I mean, every election in its own is a unique thing. There's no such thing as a normal election, in my opinion. But this one is amidst, we've got COVID-19, we have Black Lives Matter movements, we have women's rights protests. This is just this tumultuous, chaotic time. What is this more important to students? Should students care now more than ever? Because there's sort of this just general idea of like, left or right, it doesn't matter how I vote, my vote doesn't count.
Well, so I personally think every election matters. So that's kind of my big thing is elections. But I think the protest movement from this late spring into summer, as well as COVID, has kind of pushed the need for voting a little bit more. Now we're starting to see that your vote actually does make a difference. And the Washington Post actually, I believe it was yesterday, had in their online edition an article about Texas being considered as a potential swing state. I'm not sure I agree completely with their analysis, but I did welcome that analysis and looked at that and thought, well, that's interesting. I mean, we've been hearing that with Beto O'Rourke in the Cruz race, as well as going back for a couple other races in the past. Texas has been swinging a little bit blue, not completely blue, but I think it opens the door, particularly in counties like ours, to see as to what is going to happen, and we just don't know.
I definitely agree that the Beto election was it was interesting to see because it wasn't necessarily close, but it seemed a lot closer than it had been.
Well, it was close enough. I mean, if you look
right
back historically, it was closer than any election had been. I mean, most people thought Cruz would sail through that. And so it's interesting to me as Will Corrin faced that similar challenge with MJ Hager. And it's unclear. MJ is interesting in her own right with her Air Force background and kind of her non-standard ads, but will that be enough? I don't know. I think it's going to come down to who votes in the presidential race, and then do they continue to vote down the ticket or not?
So do you have any tips for students to stay informed? Because it's a constant process. There's always news churning out, and there's always new information or new drama or new this or that coming up. What is the easiest way for a student to at least boil down, here are the things that matter to me, and here are the candidates that best represent that?
So I would suggest something nonpartisan like Vote 411, which is sponsored by the League of Women Voters. Actually, just have been kind of on their radar and officially joined last week after having a couple meetings with them. I like them because the information they provide is nonpartisan. So you can go to Vote 411, type in your zip code, and it's going to give you all the candidates that submitted stuff, which is most of them. And it's going to be up on the website, and you can kind of read through it and see which candidate aligns more with your views. Of course, there's plenty of those like surveys and stuff that you can do, like quizzes, and see which candidate fits me best. The problem is half of those surveys are going to contain candidates that dropped out 6 or more months ago. So I think it's so easy to get wrapped up in what Twitter is saying today and what social media is putting out there. It's hard to get past the drama, but I think you have to kind of rise above the drama. With 29 days out, there's going to be nothing but drama from now on out. So unfortunately.
The big day is November 3rd. So if you say nonpartisan, what's an easy way to identify that, to kind of like key in on that if you're looking for nonpartisan information?
Well, the League is a nonpartisan group, so we're not supposed to be partisan. Others, you kind of want to stay away from. I like to look at C-SPAN. So for instance, I will probably watch the VP debate on C-SPAN because they don't have anyone essentially politicking. That's not their goal of C-SPAN. The goal is just to get the information out there. I mean, if you're on MSNBC or Fox, you're going to get the complete polar opposite information. And I love them because either the sky is falling or it's not. This was the greatest debate or the worst. And last week I flipped through both of them just because I had to see how awful both sides were. And it was very entertaining. I follow the Washington Post. It tends to be, I know people will say it is biased, less biased, I would say, than the New York Times. And I prefer, say, kind of a standard newspaper for getting kind of the information out there. Now, sure, again, they're in the Beltway, so they're going to get some biased information, but you have to kind of read between it and search out not for opinion pieces, but actual news.
Yeah, I think that's a very key distinction, because C-SPAN is you're just seeking the things as they're happening.
And I admit it is not exciting. It's like watching paint dry sometimes.
Definitely.
But I do love C-SPAN for that because it is gavel to gavel. And so for a debate or a major address, you will see the person sleeping there. You will see them, people running back and forth. They just set up the camera and leave, from what I understand. So basically, so.
I mean, there's not a whole lot of action going on.
Exactly. So.
Well, there's anything else you wanted to say, particularly about voting at Lamar, student involvement, anything like that?
So, obviously, probably by the time this airs, the voter registration will be over at that point in time. But I will say it is not too late to request an absentee ballot. So you have to the request has to be received by October the 23rd. So we're kind of at the end of that right now, getting towards where it's almost too late to request one based upon the mail, but do request one, and then you can vote anywhere in the state. So if you didn't want to travel home during your fall break to vote in early voting, you could vote absentee. I highly suggest voting. I don't think our polling place will have these super long lines that we see kind of in other parts of the state, just because of where we're located. I think if you're going to vote, probably you're going to vote in your home community, but I would love to walk over there. I'm going to be over there a lot during that day and to see the lines. I would love to see lines. I would love to see people being excited about it. I will remind you though, that you're not allowed to wear any political apparel to the polling place. It is a violation of the laws. So they're not being rude if they say remove your Make America Great Again hat, or remove your, Joe or Kamala hat or shirt or anything like that. That's not allowed in the polling place. Now, you can bring, and a lot of people don't know this, is that because we do have a lot on the ballot, you're welcome to bring a sample ballot with you. So you could, because there's quite a few things by the time you get further down the ballot. I know I forget about that. And so you can bring that with you. You just can't leave it in there. You can bring it with you to help you kind of make some decisions. Now, you're not supposed to be on your phone in the polling place. They got enough other stuff to monitor, but I would recommend not taking your photo in the polling place. Take it outside the polling place with your little ticket saying that you're voted.
Your sticker. I didn't know that about the sample ballot. I learned something today myself.
Yeah, that's kind of a good thing. Now, I will say this doesn't apply to most of our students, but for anyone who may be voting by mail and you don't want to mail in your ballot. So the state did change the law just last week. So there's now only one drop-off place per county, and that is a bit unfortunate. So someone asked me recently, how does that affect college students? It really doesn't, because you're not typically eligible to vote by mail unless you're out of the area, and most likely you wouldn't be driving it to Dallas with your, mail-in ballot. So, but that is some interesting change in the law.
We're almost out of time, but really quickly, I did want to touch on one last thing. What considerations are being made in regards to the polling location here at Lamar and Montaigne Center and like COVID-19 social distancing concerns?
Okay, so that is a county level thing. So I voted actually in the runoff election in July, and I was pleasantly surprised because this is something that definitely concerns me. So they do have the little spacing on the floor. They do have hand sanitizer. They have the ropes saying you go in this way, out this way. They sanitize the devices in between voters. You're supposed to wear a mask. I found it to be very safe. And certainly our county is training the poll workers on all these aspects currently.
Sounds good. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Gubala.
problem.
And thank you for watching LUTV News in Focus. To see more content from LUTV News, follow us on Twitter and like us on Facebook.